hashtag to use on social media is NewsGang. Now, before we're talking about a crackdown, well, there's been one that has been going on in the country for the last 3 weeks. If you watched Hassan Mugambi's story, in only 2 weeks in, and we're falling back into our old habits. Passengers aren't wearing their seatbelts. Matatus are not adhering to the rules as prescribed in the Michuki rules. But yet, we use all of these very big and strong terms like crackdown. Joe Ageo, what does the word crackdown mean? And has it been misused in this respect for a law that has been in place for the longest time but was made famous by Michuki way back in 2003, 15 years ago?
Well, in the dictionary, it seems that it is it's taking some severe measures to discourage undesirable behavior or even people, which is shocking because if you think about it, people are supposed to behave legally all the time. I don't think there needs to be a crackdown every time for people to obey the law.
Yeah.
I mean, if have you ever heard there was a crackdown on murderers? People are killed many times, but it is always illegal, has always been, will forever be. But I think the Matatu question has to be understood from a historical context, in my view, because the Matatu industry did not start as a legal business.
Exactly.
It started illegally.
Right.
In fact, as a matter of fact, they were called pirate taxis because those days the Wazungus were riding in Kenya bus and all of that. And so the Africans, you know, when they allowed Africans to start coming into Nairobi and they want to come, they would not use the buses the Wazungus are using. So there were all these enterprising people who would have all these rickety things to come.
Yeah.
And even the independent government outlawed it for a while. And someone told me that around about 1973, some people who had now owned buses and everything were complaining to Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. They went to see him and they said, hey, you know, these guys are really messing up our business. And then the old man is said to have asked one of them, how many matatus will you get if you sold your bus? And then the guy said about 3. Then say, go sell your bus. And within no time, actually, there are a lot of them. The number jumped like 5-fold. And
so this started out,
So even when we finally legalized them, those illegal ways seem to have stayed with them, and we have to keep thinking about how do we make sure, because it's a culture that has been around for more than 80 years or 60 for that matter, from 1934, please help me do the math. But that culture has always been there, and it seems to have outlived all the governments.
So started out as an illegality, was legalized, but there still seems to be a big vacuum. Jamila, that story that was done by Purity Mwambia raised quite a number of issues that we all know and have persisted for a while.
It's true, Yvonne, it raised quite a number of issues, some of them shocking, some of them not shocking. As you said, it's something we've known for a long time. They talked about the gangs. You know, in her story, she was trying to explain to us all these things that we hear. You have the chairman of Matatu owners telling you, "Mnataka nifanye nini jameni?" You know, when he says things like that about these gangs, that you have to pay money to every single day for your vehicle to stay on the road. You have this, unasikia words like kupiga set, kamagira, tax collectors, police officers who are called rhino. Each person wants something from you. He says by the end of the day, each matatu has to part with 1,000 shillings. There are 80,000 matatus in this country. How much is that? That's about 8 million in a day. And you look at the 200,000 registered public service vehicles in this country, and then you give money, and it comes to about 50 billion. There are people who have become billionaires in this country because of extorting money from the matatus, and it's an industry, it's a cartel. Literally, that's what
literally
it is. It is a cartel. So, and in some that's been going on for a long time. And I don't think the crackdowns that we keep talking about is actually going to stop this.
So why is it so episodic, Linus?
Very episodic because we're dealing with a very, very powerful industry. Look, the Matatu sector, from what Joe has described, first started off as an innovation. You know, sell one bus to buy 3 Matatus, smaller, faster, improve. Basically because the government was stepping back from the public transport sector, which I think was a big, big mistake. Then the industry grew, and then it became weaponized. It became a political weapon. President Daniel Arap Moi, in his heyday, was the first one who asked young men to man, allowed them to man the stages. And that's how Mungiki started, really. In Nakuru, you know, because these young men are saying we don't have jobs, and then they were allowed to man the stages. The culture then started evolving and worsening into what today I can describe as a gang of, domestic terrorists, for lack of a better word. Because these are people who can actually increase your fare.
Yeah.
Just because it's raining.
Nilas, those Matatu people know where you live.
Yeah.
They do.
As you call them, domestic terrorists, yes.
But they also know what the public thinks about them.
Yeah.
So some of these styles that they've employed have been really, really bad, cruel on the consumers. And we had a town hall the other day, and these questions were put there. Some of them coming from the audience, and I brought some of them myself as well, on the issue, for example, of how can an industry be so haphazard in the manner of imposing fares, for example.
But isn't that then the real question, that a public transport system is largely privatized? In all other countries, and across the table, we have traveled around the world, public transport is something that is managed by the state and by government. But right now, it's really left to market forces.
Because it's supposed to be a very sensitive thing.
Yeah.
In London, when they have one of those many strikes that they do have, alternative arrangements are made.
Yeah.
Not by private transporters,
but by government.
By government,
yes.
And the city of London, the authorities there, to make sure that the consumers are not.
But some would argue.
But see, I think we are losing it. The situation as it is now, it is not bad for some people. Actually, it's very good for them, because there are those who thrive in this crisis. They make money out of it. So when order is instilled, they will be out of business.
Well, but can't that order, Gashuri, be instilled as a matter of fact every single day? Why do we have a crackdown, and particularly after a big incident like Fort Tannen?
Because
58 people killed. Because
we are a country of impunity and painkillers. Even this crackdown is a painkiller.
In what sense?
In the sense that it was after the uproar following the Fort Tannen accident.
Yeah.
After 2-3 weeks, this will die down, and we will begin a crackdown on another
It's
thing.
already dying
And
down.
I can
It's
tell you
already
for free.
dying down.
I mean, listen, we had a crackdown on illicit brews.
Yes.
It died down, didn't it? But those illicit brews are back.
Yes.
We had a crackdown on illegally constructed buildings. A few of them came tumbling down.
Yes.
Bomoa,
Yes.
Green
Sani.
Mamba, Sani.
Yeah.
It's no longer there, isn't it? So we will now move to another crackdown. Maybe a crackdown on people who are not combing their hair, or something like that.
But don't we have a crackdown now on exam sheets? Because that's exactly what
Exactly.
it
We
is.
spent over 4 billion shillings for that.
But I think there is an interesting question about the private versus public.
Yeah.
Because we actually have a ridiculous system where we have too many of these little things, and we require people, for example, to sit down. Where in the world do they require people to sit down in a mass transport system? You need actually spaces for people to stand.
Yes.
You've seen that, whether it is in
Absolutely.
trains,
Yes.
whether it is in buses.
Right.
People actually stand because you want to carry as many people as possible. Of course, then you need to deal with the roads. Of course, then you make sure these things are not going at those breakneck speeds that they do. But people cannot be asked to just sit somewhere. But we do that because this thing is lawless. It is run by fear. I know people who work in the Matatu industry who will tell you, if you put your Matatu in route this or the other, Kayole, Githurai, Rongai, whatever, that they will ask you for some money. But if you were to take your camera and ask that Matatu person, do they ever ask you? They will not say. They say, no, we are very okay. There is no problem here. Because those guys could cut off your neck.
Let me just add something to what Joe is saying. There is fear, yes, but there is also a culture of feeding a particular circle of people. There is a conspiracy of silence. In the panel last week, in the town hall, I heard the Matatu Owners Association, and they would not take responsibility very clearly for very small things, like the what did we call them? Kamagiras. And also these people who take over the bus and drive, yet they don't have the license.
The Kamagiras, yes.
And I remember Simon Kimutai saying, they are employees of our employees. So you are aware of that, but you don't want to do anything because you don't want to upset the scales. There is a certain way it works.
But can
And
we talk about the reason it works? It's because
until a
there's
crackdown,
vacuum, isn't
until a
it?
It is a
crackdown,
vacuum, the government.
even the police are part of it.
Yes.
You know,
Okay.
and that's why you see them somehow having a special lane, they can overlap and all that. Because they are confident, they know they have sorted out the route. Let's stop the crackdown.
It's
But
ridiculous.
also-
I'm sorry, Gashuri. He
Will
just
it?
mentioned the police. I need to
Yeah.
talk about this.
Yeah.
In fact, in the feature that
Real quick, Jamila.
that was done by Purity, there's one image of children crowding inside a matatu. I think the matatu is supposed to carry, I think, 13 or 14. There were
Yeah.
27 children who came out of, who got into that matatu, and it passed right in front of a policeman who saw it happening, and he totally ignored it.
So we're saying what?
But
That
also-
this is not something that can be sorted out?
the other-
With now
the other-
saying
You know, people-
40,000 people
There's
have
one
been
person
netted?
called, let me say one thing. There's a man called Edmund Burke who said that you need, good men need not to do anything for chaos to reign.
Okay.
So if you decide that wacha tu ikae ifanyike hivyo endelee kuharibika, that's when things are going to become bad. So it's not all gloom and doom. Someone just needs to sit up and stop being what you call us, a nation of painkillers.
But also as,
All right.
as human beings, as users of these matatus, even as we talk about the madness on the roads, we are also contributing to it. How? The craziest drivers are the most loved. The vehicle that overlaps most
with
is
the loudest
most
music.
with the loudest music and those blaring horns is the most loved. Why? Because it gets you from Rongai to town faster
And those are the
than
ones you pay,
that
what, 400 shillings?
than the one that is driven
okay.
It's
nicely.
not love.
It's not
love.
love.
What?
They need to
It's-
get to
it's
where
what I
they're
call-
going.
I can equate to the Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
This is your hostage taker.
Yeah.
They have a lot of power over you. They can drop you off before you reach your destination.
And you can
They
do nothing.
and they
you
can do nothing.
Yeah. So which is what we're talking about, a vacuum in law. Because really, if the state was heavily involved in this and making sure that all of these things do not happen, then there wouldn't be...
Because it's painful.
The answer
It's
is
painful.
the answer
It's
is
painful.
in the answer is in a working mass
Transport.
transport system. That is the answer.
Which is run by...
By the
By
government.
this, even if it was
Yeah.
to be run
County
by the,
government.
by the private sector, but in very close partnership with the state.
Okay.
Because the state
Because one
probably
of-
would say
All right.
it doesn't want to buy
Lady,
buses,
gentlemen,
but they can work together.
Ladies, gentlemen, we've run out of time. And we need to each have our last say. But usually, what is the order? We agreed there's no rank on this table. So I will not start...
You start with me.
I start here, and then we finish there.
Yes.
Yes, please do.
my take is once again President Uhuru Kenyatta this week was talking tough on his cabinet secretaries, telling them that they are not working. And it surprises very many people because the other day he was lambasting Mwangi Kiunjuri, the agriculture cabinet secretary, twice. The question is, I never heard retired President Daniel Arap Moi do such a thing. Probably it would never happen. Moi Kibaki didn't. I keep wondering why President Uhuru Kenyatta has to tell us that his cabinet secretaries are not working, they're not doing the right things here and there. Why can't he sack them and replace them with people who are working? After all, he did not consult us when he appointed them. Sack them. Give that job to somebody who is working. And after all, I think people want service delivery.
Indeed. Linus?
Now, effective today, the 22nd of November, the UNEP Director General in Nairobi, Eric Soilham, resigned. He resigned. Resigned. Interesting. The reason? Because of frequent global travels that cost the UNEP about 50 million shillings in 22 months. This gentleman resigned. The UNEP office, a reminder, is located in Nairobi, Gigiri, which is part of Kenyan territory. This is a first on Kenyan soil, a resignation. Here at home we say, I'd rather die.
Oh, wow.
Jamila?
Well, my take. Something happened in the precincts of Parliament last year in October 2017. Two newly elected members of Parliament got into a fight, one Babu Owino and Charles Njagwa. Now, today, 3 hours of parliamentary session in the morning was dedicated to discussing these two gentlemen. A report was done and it was tabled in Parliament, but they spent 3 hours to debate it. And then this young man apologized to Parliament and they were allowed to come back as honorable members. 3 hours of parliamentary time discussing something like that. We should have used this to discuss something more important than the brawling of two gentlemen.
or something as important as using private email servers for official use. And I mean, this week there was that going on in the US, and I saw Donald Trump speak about emails, private emails being used to send official communication from the White House. And Donald Trump came out to speak about a woman, and for a moment I thought he was going to say, "Crooked Hillary, evil, lock her up." It just happened to be a woman with a Trump to her name. Very, very interesting. Strange times we're living in. Maybe it is alternative facts, as they say in the White House these days.
Is. I get to have the last word. I think we had a very illuminating conversation in the National Assembly, particularly with regards to the gender bill. A man who is nominated in Parliament, in fact, is known as nominee number 001, representing persons with disability, finally, probably lifted the lid on just how nominations happen in Parliament. He talked about them slaying their way into the National Assembly or massaging their way into the National Assembly. Thank you very much for letting us know just how murky this nomination process is. I do hope on the behalf of persons with disability that this is not how you made your way into Parliament, which is why the issue of nominating women is such a sticky point. Massaging their way, slaying their way. Well, this coming from a man in Parliament, let's just focus on what the judge Wakiaga had to say. There's also male versions of slay queens. Is he a slay queen? Slay king? That's my final thought tonight. Thank you all for watching the program tonight, and thank you, ladies, gentlemen. This was great.
This was great. Thank you, Bonnie.
Let's do this again next week.
You invaded your set.
Your Thursday set. Thank you.
You have invaded my
gang,
show tonight.
gang.
It is an invasion of the gang. Perhaps we need a crackdown on this set coming next week. The hashtag to use is NewsGang. We continue the conversation there. We will see you again next week. Have a great night.